Hey, I'm back at it again. Here I'm answering some questions from Izanor, not sure how to pronounce that. So I'll just dive right in. So we have 8 questions here, so I'll try to get through them reasonably quickly. So the first question is, the 3 major releases, Giza, Olympia, and Rhodes, are been working in parallel. What's the reason behind this approach? Does this mean Giza is in stabilization mode and Olympia is in active development mode? So I think in order to understand how we organize our releases, I think you should understand how we work, which is largely that we try to work on independent strands of development really quite a bit earlier than when they would be released. So the storage system, I think we started Q2 of this year. And Olympia actually was started way, probably more than a year ago at this point. It's just that the Pioneer 2, so Olympia has 2 parts to it: a radically enhanced runtime with lots of new features and improvements to the way the governance works and so on. And then it has Pioneer 2, which is a new front-end application that allows the community to operate the system. And the runtime component of this release was done many months ago, probably like 8 months ago or something. So what we do is we try to start independent strands of work, which we don't know when will be release ready. It's really hard to anticipate, like when you start, because first of all, there's the runtime side, then there's like integration testing, and there's the query infrastructure, and then front-end application. So there's different layers you have to get up to speed with whatever you're building. And so it's kind of hard to forecast when it will be ready. So for these 3 releases specifically, they've started independently a very long time ago, and that's why it's coincidental that they're all sort of landing at the same time. That wasn't by design. So that will pose some challenges in of itself. Maybe you will learn something post-release that we need to incorporate into Olympia from the Giza release. We'll just have to roll with those punches. That could happen, but I still, this is the best way, I think, for us to do our development. So that's that question. Second is, Rhodes isn't mentioned anywhere on GitHub. Is this something that is yet to be considered? So the Rhodes release, which is the release that has 2 important parts, possibly the scope may increase. It has video NFTs, and also that the DAO can do payouts to content creators. That hasn't been planned. The release plan isn't ready for that, so it's still in the early stages of being defined as a release, but the core features of it are in sort of mature development. So the runtime side is pretty much ready. The product side in Atlas is being designed right now. So I would say, yes, it's the one that's least mature, and it could be that we won't make it in December. December has its own dynamics in terms of holidays and everything. So. But it definitely is a release that has been identified pretty recently as being the next milestone for what we want to put out. Then there's a question asking, can you explain the drop of Joystream out of the Polka project's top 10? It used to be one of the few points to be proud about. Then it links to the contribution page on GitHub, shows a significant decline in dev activity from mid-July. Okay, so I guess first I just start by saying that if to the extent I know what he means, I don't see this. So this is the development ranking across the Polkadot ecosystem. Here we're at number 8. We oscillate from anywhere from 2 to 6. I think last few times I checked over the past few months. Now we're at 8. I think that's more of a coincidence than anything else. Certainly we're in the top 10. And so, just to answer the general point, there certainly hasn't been a decline in the activity of the Joystream system overall. He says that he's seeing a drop in activity on GitHub. I think this is the most useful chart for probably that he's referring to, which is the contributions chart on the main repo. We have a mono repo on Joystream where you do see a big dip in July. But what you have to keep in mind is for these contribution charts, they only track a specific branch. So if you don't know what a branch is in Git, it's this specific history of changes that has been applied to a code base. And since this is tracking the master branch, which you could think of like the main branch or maybe the production branch of the Joystream network. and since we haven't done any sort of public changes or releases that would require merging, or certainly a lot of the work that has happened hasn't been merged into the master branch, it simply won't appear. So all the things that we're doing are not fully accounted for in this graph. When we do the merge and we do the release, this graph will change, and then you'll see a bunch of new activity. So that could be a part of the reason why this looks like this, even though there hasn't been a genuine drop in the actual development activity. But also you have to remember that a lot of our activity isn't in this repo. We have a mono repo which holds a lot of our code base, like the runtime and I believe the CLI and some integration tests. But like everything else, like Atlas and Pioneer 2 and like all that stuff, which is being very actively developed, isn't even in that specific repo. So you won't see that activity at all. So hope that was useful. Then there is a question about, is it a fair conclusion that JS Genesis experience resource attrition issues? I think this basically asks, have you guys had any issues with resources being able to finance development, given that he's assuming that development has declined? The answer there is no. We have pretty much had a stable burn, the highest burn we've had on all kinds of development and related activities throughout this year. While we were doing our fundraising, we didn't grow as much as we had planned to do because we didn't know exactly what the outcome will look like. But we do expect to grow some amount at least within the team going forward at this point on. So answer there is no, there hasn't really been. 6, you touched upon the on-chain monetization model based on views and other popularity parameters, but still I was under impression that this is largely still not thought through. Are you open to community suggestions in this? Certainly I'm open to community suggestions on that and any other question. I can provide more information about that in another video, I think, just to avoid this one getting too long. But yes, if you have any ideas about what kind of monetization we should have, please feel free to suggest that. We have some core monetization features that have already been presented, like NFTs and social tokens and so on. But he's saying popularity-based monetization. So that would be something like views, stuff like that. I haven't explained that in any detail, although the token model video does try to explain that a little bit, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I will get back to that in a future video. But if you have ideas, please feel free to share. Number 7 is, surprisingly, there was no information about gateway providers in your presentation. Will Pioneer 2 have features related to gateway providers? So that's correct. There wasn't any information about it. Pioneer 2 will not have any features about it. In Pioneer 2, we've really designed much more that we can ship. Well, much more is an exaggeration. More than we can ship, but we haven't designed anything specifically about gateway providers. And I guess as a point of information, we will go to mainnet without gateway providers almost certainly. So maybe that's actually some non-trivial news, I guess. So we have on the gateway system, there are different parts. There's a node, there's a runtime part, there's updating the protocol between gateways and the distribution infrastructure. And the runtime side, we have a first draft of that whole runtime, so which has all like these payment channel things. So that's sort of quite mature. And that's an example of what I mentioned in this first point, that we started that work, again, I think at this point 4 or 5 months ago. But that likely will not go into production even on mainnet because there are so many other complementary pieces. So by virtue of that, no, Pioneer 2 does not have any features related to gateway providers. And 8, when shall we expect the disclosure of the funding round particulars, VCs, figures, blah, blah, blah? That will be coming out shortly. Frankly, at this point, just a matter of bandwidth and time. Once you do these kinds of funding activities, you get a backlog of operational and technical and hiring and other issues that are like pivotal. So getting those all going again and getting the project management, making sure that all is working well takes time, and announcing isn't really urgent per se. But soon, let's say, hopefully not too many weeks. So that's that. I hope that was useful. Check in for a later video. Bye.